There are two main ways to show the user the results of a VBA procedure: displaying the result in a message box or writing the result to a cell range. I'll cover message boxes in another movie, but I'll show you how to write values to a cell range now. First, just to give you an idea of what is going on in our worksheet here, I have a set of sales data from here, and then I also have a cross table where we have the number of sets that an individual orders, the number of bottles in each one of those sets, and this grid will display the total number of bottles in a set of varying sizes. Now let's take a look at the code that I'm using. If I just want to write a value to a cell, then I can use the range object's value property. So in this case, I have the string address is D6, and if I have the range D6, I can assign the value property the string commission. Now before I run that, let's flip back here, pressing Alt F11. You'll notice that I have an Excel table with a cell in C6. That means if I add a cell to D6, it will be included in the table. If you click here and type in data, Excel will include it in the table. So let me show you what that looks like when I do it using my code. Inside the code module, press F5 and Alt F11 to come back, and you can see that Excel added a commission column to the table. Flip back to the code. Now you notice that I used a variable to assign a value to the range.value property, and I also used a variable to assign the address. Even though you can use a variable as the range, you can't perform a calculation in the reference. In other words, there's no way to write a version of range D6 that performs the calculation range D6 plus one row. Yes, you can use the offset property, but that takes time and it can be a bit clunky. Instead, you can use the cells.value property to write and read values. I do that here in this cells command. The cells command has two arguments. The first is the row, and the second is the column. Now remember, that order is the opposite of what you do here when you're typing out an address literally. For example, D6. In that case, it's column first and then row. But for cells, it's row first and then columns. In this subroutine, to calculate the row number, I find the row number of the current cell, that's the active cells row property, and add it to this integer here, which is in the counter. So for example, if the active cell were in row number 1, and I were counting here 1 through 7 the first time through the for next loop, then the row number would be the row number of the active cell, which is 1, plus 1, which is the value of the row counter variable at this point. So it would be row number 2. And the code would do the same thing for the column. It would find the column number of the active cell and add to that the value in the count variable here, the integer column counter. When I run this code, it's going to create an array of values. And I have chosen as my starting cell, cell F5. So that means that the first value will go one cell to the right and one cell below F5. So in other words, it should end up in G6. So when I press F5 and press F11 to move back, you see that indeed F5 is the active cell, and the Excel VBA code filled in the values in the interior of my grid. Writing values into an Excel worksheet is fairly straightforward, but you should be on the lookout for opportunities to use the cells objects value property instead of more complex methods using other properties.